The HX Collective explores the human experience through three main channels of life: work, relationships, and self. With raw, authentic conversations, the podcast investigates how challenges can become powerful teachers, leading to personal growth and deeper connections. Rooted in humanity-centered design, each episode reflects a commitment to doing good and doing well, featuring diverse voices and generational perspectives. Expect gripping stories of struggle and success, with thought-provoking discussions and concrete tools and tactics that encourage you to rethink your relationship with distress, helping you to establish your full human experience. This is the HX Collective channel. Hello, friends. Welcome to our next edition of the HX Collective podcast, where we are going to have an amazing conversation with HX ally Gretchen Miller Busch. Now, friends, I don't know what you're doing right now while you're listening to this podcast, but I'm going to encourage you to stop multitasking, because Gretchen and I are going to pick up our conversation about what it means to elevate human flourishing by having a reimagined relationship with your professional life. In fact, when we think about the purpose and the ways that we're engaging in our work, Gretchen is going to open our eyes today to think about what it means to have a rich professional life, a fulsome, full body professional life. And she's going to operate with a set of experiences. She's going to share with us a bunch of data, and she's going to help us reimagine what's possible for us to elevate our game and the game for others in the human experience. So my good friend Gretchen, welcome back to the podcast. It's so great to pick this conversation up with you. And to set a bit more context, if you will, for our audience's purposes, in addition to being an extraordinary thought leader in a category of one when it comes to rich professional life, you also are an extraordinary partner at Faegre Drinker, which is an exceptional law firm. And you're coming at this through the lens of being a lawyer and also being a devotee of helping elevate the human experience. So tell us a little bit about you. Give us a little more context so that we can join you in this awesome conversation.
Thank you so much, Deb. First of all, it's so great to be back with you. Anytime I get to spend time talking about things that are important to both of us and spend time with you makes my week. So thanks.
Yeah.
So I am a lawyer. I have spent the last 26 years of my career at the law firm of Faegre Drinker, Biddle and Reed. We have gone through a number of mergers over those years, but Faegre has been my home for pretty much my entire career. I spent the last 20 years of that as a partner within the firm. And I've had a really wonderful opportunity to observe attorneys and other professionals performing at the top of their game. At the same time, over those years, I've had an opportunity to see others who weren't flourishing. And I feel like in these later stages of my career, in these later years, it's really, really important to me to spend time doing what I can to pay it forward and give others the opportunity to learn some of the lessons I've learned the hard way and hopefully achieve success and fulfillment in their careers in a way that I've been able to, and I've been fortunate to, with the help of so many others around me.
Well, first of all, it is not a surprise to me that you are so quick to shine the light on the environment, the community in which you're operating, and the wonderful colleagues and mentors that you are always so quick to pay attention. But when it comes to pay it forward, I can say with total authority, you are a walking pay it forward. So you are the mentor that people are talking about. And while I recognize that a lot of our listeners today are not necessarily lawyers or even know much about the legal industry, I think there is so much relevance because the practice of law, I mean, human beings are the product, if you will. So when you think about human flourishing and you think about the humans are the revenue producers in a particular law firm, I mean, I can't think of more relevance in understanding what it means to flourish at work and how we can see our work as an avenue to really become the very best version of ourselves, and not just as a practitioner, but really as a whole human being. We also both know that law firms don't always start with that recognition of human flourishing as the priority. There are a lot of other things kind of competing for the attention. And so, when you think about the vantage point of what's possible, particularly when you look at a law firm's business model, so human beings are the source of revenue for a law firm and profitability. When we think about how legal services get implemented and delivered, they are very human centric and very human connected, not only within the body of a firm, but also in the interactions with clients. And then when you think about just the rule of law and the broader impact that we have on communities and societies, I mean, in my opinion, there's really nothing of significance or importance in the world that happens that doesn't include a lawyer. I mean, if you think about it, and which is why I'm a big lover of lawyers. But all that to be said, where do you think, when you look at that as a framework, and I'm presuming my description is you're agreeing that this is a way to think about the practice of law and the role of lawyers, where do you think the biggest opportunities are to maybe shift attention and focus to the conversation of human flourishing and to elevate the human experience?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think you're right. A lot of listeners today aren't lawyers, don't have the experience that I have of working inside a very large law firm. But I think there's a ton of commonalities out there with between lawyers and other professional services jobs, anybody whose time is their commodity, because that's at the end of the day what we're selling. We're selling ourselves in a way. And law firms and other professional services jobs are always going to be demanding jobs. And driving revenue for the firm is, of course, always going to be critical. It's the foundation. It's why we're here. We are in a business, like I said, where time is the commodity that we sell. But to me, it's really important to start recasting that conversation in a way, because we need to recognize that in a lot of ways, revenue driven by work on client matters is really a lagging indicator. The leading indicators, the building blocks of success for an individual lawyer and also for a firm, like employee engagement, excellence, strong and deep client relationships, collegial and supportive cultures, and a focus on community, are really the things that drive that revenue, because it helps support the people who are delivering the services. And understanding that if you have lawyers that are truly flourishing and thriving, they're happier, they're more productive, they're more successful, and they are the ones who are going to be able to help drive success for the organization long term.
So many good things to unpack. So when I think about, as you're describing, there's an adage that I often say, and it's certainly been mentored into me, is that we cannot give away the things we don't possess. And so it's sometimes very tempting to say, well, engagement and excellence and happiness, like, meh, those are byproducts, that of the excellent technical work. And yet, when you layer in that experience of joy in the job, that feeling of belonging, that sense of purpose, it becomes indigenous to our ability to then do the time or the work in a way that feels markedly different to the stakeholders that we're serving, whether it is clients, whether it's our colleagues, whether it's communities as a whole. And so when you start to think about you're championing this new conversation, built, pilot cohorts around this conversation of rich professional life, unpack this for us, because I can immediately think rich professional life. Immediately you're like, oh, more money. Okay, well, let's be okay. It's okay to make money. It's okay to be excellent. That produces great income. But rich professional life is so much more. And so tell us a little bit about what this construct means. And then again, why you're in such a fertile ground to see the connection between rich professional life and the ability to create an exceptional human experience.
Absolutely. Yeah. So a rich professional life is founded on the idea that a demanding career doesn't have to be draining. And also at the same time, what makes up a fulfilling career is going to be different for everyone, not just each individual person, but within each individual at different stages of their career and their work life. And the idea that a rich professional life can be professionally rewarding, super demanding, but also intellectually satisfying, emotionally, socially, and psychologically fulfilling, and truly enjoyable.
I find this distinction between demanding and not draining as being a really important anchoring device. And when I think about some of the ways in which the constructs of, work hard, but also, live well, what else can you tell us about this framing, and in particular, the intersection of where a rich professional life actually intersects with the concept of burnout.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I think it's safe to say that nearly everybody experiences, in whatever you do, experiences some level of burnout at some point in their career. Some people push through it. Some people just say la 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 and just keep on going. Some, I think, mistakenly believe that burnout is a sign that whatever they're doing or whatever organization they're at is not right for them and that it requires some sort of a change. But I'm really focused on recasting that into the idea of how can one manage their professional life to prevent burnout or to remedy it when it's looming? And a lot of it being focused on the importance of community and having colleagues on whom you can rely, but also identifying other elements of your work life that can help diffuse that tendency toward burnout in a high stress, high stakes job.
Yeah. Okay. Connection and community. I First, knowing you, I recognize that you are a walking magnet to build community, and you build community with complete strangers in increments of a 30-minute while waiting in line. You suddenly have created a whole community that's connected to solving for a particular problem or building something to make something more efficient or effective. When we think about that, though, it sometimes would seem like, are you saying make friends? Because I can imagine when we think about community and connection, sometimes we kind of diminish that the capacity for friendship making, and having a sense of friends at work can be really good salves on the wounds of fatigue and stress and burnout. And they can absolutely be the reason why we keep engaging and enduring a demanding job, because there is something else that we get, a gift with purchase, the fact of friendship and community. Talk a little bit more about that sense of friendship, and what does it really mean when you think about sort of the prevention to burnout, or that experience of a rich professional life that would include the ability to make and have friends?
I'm so glad you asked that. And I recognize that when we have a conversation about, hey, you can prevent burnout by having friends at work, it seems somewhat shallow or somewhat trite. And I think that's not the right way to look at it. The reality is that, all of us have our work lives. We all have our home lives. And I think that there's been a misconception for a really long time that never the twain shall meet. That I go into work, I work my butt off, I grind away. And then when I need support, when I need emotional support, when I need to vent, when I need to just, talk about my day, I go home and I have my home life friends that I have that conversation with. And that's not to diminish the absolute importance of that. So it's your spouse, your friends at home, whatever. That's incredibly important. But when you are in a high stakes, high stress, demanding job, having people that are going through a very similar experience to you, are under the same pressures, understand the pressures that you are under yourself, are in a position to be able to support you, to take some of that pressure off, to work through challenges and issues, whether it's, internal organizational politics, or how am I going to get through the next 6 months with everything I have on my plate. That community and that belonging within the sphere of your work life can be one of the greatest salves and one of the greatest insulators against long-term professional burnout. And so when we say friends, I mean, those are the people that you share your best day with, your worst day with, are the people that you can rely on, that you can lean on, that can share the gallows humor with you when you're working late nights, whatever it might be. Those are really the ones that are going to be there and who have the opportunity to show up for you when you really need them.
So it's so common sense what you're saying, and yet it is not common practice. And as I think about the opportunities for how this happens, I think historically there's been a lot more reliance on sort of the organic opportunities that happen because you were physically in an office. So there was a certain origin of bumping into people. So like random acts of connection can occur because you have proximity. And now we know that with hybrid work and with, an evolving workforce, we've got lawyers now that are from Gen Z, they're native digitals. Knowing that the instances of human connection really have been stressed and have shifted and changed, why do you think firms aren't prioritizing this construct of the human experience, and are not prioritizing this idea of rich professional life that goes beyond, or at least at the same level as, the billable hour? Like what is it that's getting in the way from your vantage point?
Yeah. I think, and this is just my opinion, but I think that there's some concern among professional services firms, whether it's law firms, accountancy firms, what have you, that I take talking about things other than productivity and revenue, billable hours, and taking the focus off of those in any sort of way, that we're giving too much attention to things other than that. And that if we're talking it's going to be somehow detrimental to our business or convey the wrong message to our people and our clients. And moreover, I think it's really easy to draw a solid line between being hard charging and focusing on high performance and driving revenue. It's a little bit more difficult to directly tie things like having meaningful relationships or a sense of purpose or flexibility in how and where you work to revenue and financial success. But when it comes to retaining talent, helping lawyers or other professionals grow as professionals, help them perform at their best at the top of their game, those elements that have been traditionally characterized as soft are no less important to long-term success and revenue than the actual drivers of the revenue.
So I'm glad you said that, because the data supports you. And what I love so much about your firm, and when I'm watching more and more law firms, and really, as you said, professional services firms in general, are starting to pay attention, that we can look to the social science of how culture is built, how leaders lead well, what are the factors for talent retention, attraction and retention. And so everything that you're describing, and as we start to look to, well, what is it that we then do? And how, if I'm listening and I'm like, okay, I bite, I'm willing to consider prioritizing some of the things that you're describing. Where did you get started on your focus? Like, where have you gotten started? Because you're championing this already at your firm. So where would one start to get focused? And then we'll walk through, if I'm not mistaken, 11 elements, I think, are in your protocol. So friends, get something to write with, because she's going to give us concrete tactics. That's our promise here at the HX Collective Podcast. But until then, walk us through the starting point. Like, how do we start to even introduce this concept and start to get a chance to test drive meaningful activity and construct to make a rich professional life on par with that productivity, billable hour revenue, and so forth?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, I recognize the irony of saying this, especially after my prior comment, but I think that before we start talking about the elements of building a rich professional life that are above and beyond revenue, we gotta lay out the foundation. And the foundation in any sort of professional services firm, again, where our time and what we deliver, our services, are a commodity, is that foundation is always going to have to be productivity and revenue. We're never going to be able to get away from that. Lawyers, especially young lawyers, have to be laser focused on the non-negotiables of their work life, especially in their early years, doing excellent work, learning their craft, and maintaining the necessary level of productivity. But however that is measured within an organization, whether it's billable hours or otherwise. But in the early years of your career, even though it feels like sometimes that's all you have the energy for is just doing the job, you really need to find opportunities and ways to carve even little bits of time out to do the things that give you energy, that give you life. And if that's just, you know, finding your people within the organization and scheduling a weekly or a monthly coffee chat, either virtual or in person, or it's taking time to devote a little bit of time to your firm's pro bono, because that's the kind of thing that fills your heart and fills your cup. Whatever it might be, you need to find the things, you need to take personal responsibility for finding the things that give you energy. And, you know, Most firms, mine included, are absolutely phenomenal about providing the resources and making it available. It's incumbent on the lawyers themselves to go take advantage of those, to seek those out. And if it happens to be something that your firm isn't providing or isn't supporting, if there's an element of your professional life that is missing that you feel like it'd be really beneficial to you and maybe others, it's incumbent on you to start that conversation and share it with others and see if it's something that you can help your organization adopt.
I love it. So, true to form, I think it's really important that we're not talking about woo-woo, airy fairy things. There is a certain recognition. And let's be clear, when you are excellent at the craft of your work, when you are highly productive, when you are a high demand professional, because you are so exceptional at that part of the work life, there is an element of human flourishing that comes with that experience of yourself being excellent. So it's not all cost. There is gain for that. I also love your reinforcement that, look, we have to participate in our own rescue. We have to be agents for our own experience and looking for ways to either take advantage of what's available, be curious enough to seek if there are resources or opportunities to be replenished, to gain energy, or to start the conversation. And these are really good practical places to start. So one of my biggest areas of respect for you is your desire to take things that can feel very complex and loose and build a level of clarity and concreteness that makes a person say, okay, I can see that, I can understand that, I can action that. By the way, it's also what makes you a fantastic lawyer. All that being said, I know one of the things you're introducing in this conversation of rich professional life is building a framework that is rooted in 11 elements. So at a really high level, walk us through what these elements are so that we can have the benefit of seeing them, in all together. And then as we work through our conversations, some of the ways that you would be recommending, we can't take full blast all 11 things all at once. So we're going to be looking for some of your expert guidance on where to prioritize. But first, set the stage for us. What are the 11 elements from your vantage point for a rich professional life?
Yeah, totally. So there are 11 elements, and I think that anybody who looks at this list is probably going to take their own spin on it. But that's again, like why a rich professional life makes sense is because it's not a one size fits all. It's a choose your own adventure, if you will. I'm dating myself by even mentioning that. But so the 11 elements: meaningful relationships, a sense of purpose and impact, collaboration and teamwork is another important one. Autonomy can be a really important element of rich professional life. Learning, growth, and mastery are important. Recognition and appreciation can be incredibly valuable and could be incredibly motivating for a lot of people. Another interesting one that I don't think we talk a lot about is psychological safety. That's an important element. Sometimes it's also referred to as cultural alignment, which is an organization where you feel safe being yourself, expressing your opinions, that the culture of your organization aligns with your own personal values. Another element is work-life integration and flexibility, which we're seeing a lot more, thank goodness, these days. And when you and I started out our careers, Deb, it was not a part of the conversation, but hybrid work and flexible schedules, I think, are really, really important to a lot of people these days, regardless of the stage of their career. Another element is financial reward. You mentioned this early on when we were talking, which is, we all work for a reason. And for some, that financial reward is one of the most important elements of building a rich professional life. The last two are leadership and influence. Some people achieve great gratification, especially once they've been a part of their career for a long time and they've moved down the road a little bit. Leadership and influence can be really important elements to help them feel fulfilled. And then finally, fun, joy, and levity. Just a sense of having fun and enjoying what you're doing and being able to not take yourself or what you're doing too seriously. Those are the 11 elements.
The 11 elements. Well, I mean, I'm like, yes, please. And Thank you. Like all 11 of those things, I'm just imagining if they were present or if levers were being leveraged in these areas, I can only imagine what it would feel like then to perform the work that I make a living doing, I make a living by performing a job or a role inside of the organization, but I'm making a life by experiencing these 11 elements. So that making a living versus making a life, that's what I'm drawing from you. And if I'm understanding these things at a real macro level, just out of curiosity, when I even say that, what's the difference between making a living and making a life? What would you say the difference is?
Oh, I love that. I think making a living is great. And it's going and it's doing your job and doing a really good job, getting some fulfillment out of that. Making a life is integrating who you are and what is important to you as a part of making that living. And it's being able to bring your whole self to what you do each day, to be authentic, to have those relationships, have that community around you that know who you are as a person, being able to express that. And as a part of that, feel more engaged in your work and that you really have a true and deep desire to do a good job for the sake of yourself, because you truly are building a life.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that. I kind of threw that question as a curveball, and of course, you
It's
had
a good
an
one.
awesome answer.
It's a good one.
It just occurred to me because that really is what you're saying. Like
No,
there
you're
is
totally right.
and so when we look then at these 11 elements, and as you think about prioritization, what are some of the ways that you are recommending, when you're delivering, first creating visibility that a rich professional life is even a thing, and then looking at there are 11 different elements or levers that one can have in the experience of fulfillment in a rich professional life. What are some of the things that you recommend that individuals and or organizations or maybe leaders that are saying, all right, which of these are going to be most impactful? And is there an order of priority that can have a positive affect on any of the other elements? So share with us a little bit of what you're recommending.
Yeah, totally. So the analogy that I like to use is that a rich professional life is pizza, and that everybody has different toppings on their pizza that they like. And the toppings that you like today may not be the same toppings that you like or that you might have ordered 20 years ago when you were starting out your career. So if we kind of follow that pizza analogy through a little bit, talking a little bit about what we were first speaking of, which is the foundation of your career, the crust of your pizza always needs to be doing whatever the job is that you've been hired for. That's your foundation. And so if you're in a professional services firm, a lawyer or an accountant or that kind of thing, it's going to be your productivity. It's doing a really good job. It's, delivering excellent work, delivering excellent client service, everything that's kind of the foundational, why you come to work each day. The toppings of your pizza are the elements of your rich professional life. And I recommend that you only select the ones that you like and recognize that everybody's secret sauce, everybody's topping combination is going to be different and that it's going to change over the course of your career. So, using myself as an example, when I was early on in my career, right out of law school, and my husband and I were struggling to make ends meet, I was new at the firm, didn't really have any idea what I was doing. The elements of a rich professional life were mastery, industriousness, just making sure that I was like busy and financial reward because, we had a mortgage to pay, we had furniture to buy, we had student loans to pay off, that kind of thing. And then, fast forward a few years when I was at the middle stage of my career and early on in partnership, I had young kids at home. All of a sudden, my pizza toppings converted over to things like flexibility and work life integration, cultural alignment, being able to come to a place where people knew I had kiddos, they understood the pressures I was under. I had friends so that I could talk with about, hey, how many hours of sleep did you get last night? 2.5? Outstanding. And that was also when meaningful relationships really took forefront in my career, and that support that came from colleagues who, when I was not at my best, they were there to help pick me up, and I was there to do the same for them. And then today, as I'm reaching the more senior stages of my career, my pizza toppings have changed again. Having a sense of purpose and that fun and joy and levity are so important to me today. But I would say that the through line has always been those meaningful relationships. That's the pizza topping that for me doesn't change. And I'd like to think that every professional, because we're all human, meaningful relationships is probably going to be one of your primary pizza toppings all the way through. And it's going to be the one that helps you effectuate a lot of the others.
Yeah. So, what a great analogy. And now I'm hungry. I'm going to say that. I do think, though, the permission to see the toppings evolve as life stages evolve. One of the things we spend a lot of time talking about, and frankly, I suspect will be another podcast conversation with you, is what happens after 50. And there has been so much research that has been stated that, when you turn 50, you're at halftime, which, by the way, I like that optimism. I am planning to live to 100, much to the chagrin of my family and my financial advisor. Like, really, you want us to model this to 100? I'm like, yes, please. But the idea of that second half and how we move from a paradigm of where success, the productivity, the financial reward, the recognition, to now this second half of season. And I'm just going to go on a limb. Gretchen is at halftime. We're not going to say how far away from 50, but we're going to say 50. And I love that you said fun, because I do think there is something powerful about doing all the hard things to then get to this stage of your career. And as you said, meaningful relationships have been present all along, but there are like new elements that you can lean into because you've earned the right to have that freedom or that flexibility, that whimsy in your life. And you've also, though, been putting your attention less on success and I think more on significance. Like, impact is really important. Say a bit about that, because I do think it's important for people to look forward to what a rich professional life looks like. And I'll just say this as a quick promo. Staying in private practice as a lawyer, there are some headwinds that may prevent people from staying in the practice for as long as you've been in it and not seeing this season. But so, two thoughts, like, what do we have to look forward to in our second half? And then secondly, I'm going to give you a chance to do a PSA for any lawyers that are listening. Why should they stay in private practice beyond 50? So, or why should they get to 50 or beyond? But first things first, what are you looking forward to now that you're in this season, this sort of second half post 50, when it comes to a rich professional life?
Absolutely. Yeah. So, first of all, I don't feel over 50, and I feel incredibly fortunate to not feel over 50, but I decidedly am. And I, I had a conversation with a group of girlfriends maybe about 3 years ago. We were getting together for coffee. It was a group that I had gotten to know through a professional organization that I'd been a part of for a number of years. And we got together in person somewhere each year just for a couple days to reconnect. And we were sitting down and we started talking about, where do you envision your career here on out? What are you focused on? What's important to you? And I really honestly just had not ever taken the time to like look up and look behind me and look ahead of me and think about what's really important. And in that moment, I just had this flash of, I am so incredibly fortunate to have had the opportunity to be with such a phenomenal organization for this many years. To be clear, I've worked hard and I've put in a lot of hours and a lot of blood, sweat, and tears. But I've also had the immense privilege to work with incredible colleagues who have given me opportunities to be successful, who've mentored me, who've given me opportunities with clients, who've given me opportunities for leadership. And as a result of that, I now have the wherewithal and the ability to say, it's incumbent on me to pay that forward and to look at the next generation and really acknowledge that, if anything, it's even harder today than it was when I was coming up. And it's really, really important to me to spend time mentoring people, bringing them along. The the phrase that I've heard over and over is be the person who is speaking well of others when they're not in the room. be their advocate. Don't just be their mentor, but be their advocate. And that's super important to me because I know that there have been innumerable people that spoke well of me when I had no idea, when I was not in the room. And that gave me incredible opportunities. And if I have the opportunity to lean into servant leadership in this next phase of my career, to invest in the success of others, even when there's nothing in it for me, what there really is in it for me is that sense of purpose, is that personal fulfillment, is that fun, joy, and levity. Because I finally have kind of gotten to the point, my kids are grown. They're doing wonderfully well. I'm so fortunate at that. I have a phenomenal husband. I have this great work life. What can I do to help others achieve whatever success means to them? That's what I want to do. That's what's important to me.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing to look forward to because as your kindred sister over 50, there is that reality of, wow, like I get to be the one who speaks well of others. I get to be the person who's advocating. I get to be the one who can steward influence and reach and connection. And it is so flippin' fun to be able to be at this life stage because there's such an abundance mindset of being able to give so much to others. And the joy that you get in being able to steward that well is a big promo for excitement in that second half for that post 50 work life. Now let's talk about lawyers. Again, I want to, I'm a super fan of yours and your firm. And at the same time, if I'm a young man or young woman listening to this conversation and just thinking like, oh, I don't know if I can keep doing private practice and become a partner. And you said you've been a partner for 20 years, like just the idea of that can feel really far ahead and it can feel very tempting to abandon or to look elsewhere or to explore another facet of practice. And by no means is that to be diminished, that being in private practice at a law firm isn't the hierarchy of that's the best thing to do and everything else is like, B team. But I do think sometimes we need the encouragement of like, why would I want to do my very best work as a lawyer in private practice at a law firm of any size? And you would say to me, because
when you are the commodity, when you are the engine that drives the organization, you have such an opportunity to make an impact and also a degree of autonomy that, there's tons of studies out there that they poll lawyers, what are the facets of their professional life that they value the most. Autonomy comes in tippity top almost all the time. And so I would say that, being able to build a career that is of entirely your own making, to do it with amazing colleagues, to be able to find your people and go out and achieve great levels of success, do wonderful work for clients, build deep and lasting relationships with those clients. Those are all incredibly gratifying ways to spend one's professional life. The irony of this is, I don't know if I've actually ever told you this, Deb, but I went to law school with absolutely zero desire to ever be in private practice. I really thought law firms were kind of evil. Of course, all I knew about law firms, because I had no lawyers in my family, was what I saw on TV. But I always wanted to be in-house. And so I went to law school planning that was going to be my career path. I spent a little bit of time in-house, had an opportunity to go with a firm on what I thought was going to be a very short-term basis until I figured out how I was going to get back in-house, and realized very quickly that law firms were not at all what I thought they were. And having a group of dedicated professionals around me who were focused on similar things, who were under the same pressures, who shared in this crazy experience and were dedicated to delivering the highest value legal services to clients and to building those long-term lasting relationships with one another and with their clients. It was amazing. The light went on. And so I just say to young lawyers out there, it can be a wonderful, wonderful career. And the key is surrounding yourself with your people, finding your people, and finding those elements of your work life above and beyond just doing the job day to day that really give you that extra oomph and that really make your work life truly rich. That's the secret sauce.
I love it. So as we wrap for today, I always ask guests to help us think about calls to action and specifically what it would look like. What are like 3 concrete things that someone could do in the next 30 days to really explore, to take counsel from you, to understand how to reimagine right where they are and how to incorporate any of those 11 pizza toppings, also known as the 11 elements of the rich professional life, how they can begin to explore and engage. Advice first, if you were a leader at a place of business, any kind of organization or professional firm, what's a piece of advice you would give us to action? I'm going to ask you then at an individual level and what to do, kind of at the team or individual levels within a team. And then a closing piece of advice just for personal consideration. So first, high level, leaders, call to action, advice you would give.
Absolutely. So first and foremost, I think it's important for law firms and leaders within law firms to recognize that providing meaningful support for people to find and nurture their own rich professional life is going to have a positive impact on their bottom line, no matter what. It's not a soft perk. It's really smart business strategy. Using resources, programs, policies that support different elements of a rich professional life is good for people. And what's good for people is good for business. And a reminder that it's well within companies' grasp, within the organization, to be not only as profitable and successful and financially successful as possible, but it's also possible to do that while remaining aligned with and supporting the values and ideals and needs of the professionals that make up the organization.
That's great. All right. So I'm hearing this is a good business strategy worth exploring and not in competition to the economics of a firm. All right. What advice would you give if someone were listening and they were thinking about this at a team level or within individuals? What is some of the advice you would give?
Absolutely. My advice at a team level and an individual level is to not wait around for someone to build this for you. A rich professional life is something you can and should be doing every day. Thinking about what's important to you, thinking about what the toppings are on your pizza, and finding ways within, micro moments within your day, opportunities that already exist within your organization, whether it's a firm or otherwise, to really lean into those things. And again, if there's elements of it that you don't see that you think are really important, have those conversations with your colleagues, with your leaders, to find ways that can encourage and promote ways that the organization can bring additional policies, processes, procedures, programs, all the P's, to help you build your rich professional life. Think about what leaves you feeling energized and what drains you. Go talk about it with your colleagues, with your friends, with your buddies, and go out and make it happen.
I love it. And then the final piece of advice is actually an advice that if you now knowing what you know, being in this awesome season of career and life, what advice would you give to yourself? If you look back 20, 30 years, what's the call to action you would have given yourself at a much younger age based on what you know now? What would you have shared with that version of yourself at the beginning?
Oh, wow. That's such a good one. I think I would look back at my younger self and I would say, this is all going to be worth it someday. That this is hard work and you can't shortcut being a really solid professional. You can't shortcut building those relationships. Never pass up an opportunity to spend time with people, to build those relationships, because at the end of the day, your community and the people that you surround yourselves in your work life are going to be the ones that are not only most important to your success as a professional in ways that you cannot even imagine, but are going to be most important to you building that wonderful work life that is fulfilling, that's enjoyable, that you can look back on with fondness and see that you were able to build this amazing work life and
I
that
will
you're proud of yourself.
I love that. So underscore and double exclamation points. It will all be worth it. Thank you always, my friend, for being such an awesome ally to the HX Collective, for being so united and committed with me and with our community and our mission to elevate human flourishing. And I cannot wait to pick up our next conversation. Thank you, my friend.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here. If today's conversation sparked something in you, we hope you'll carry it forward with curiosity, compassion, and courage. Subscribe to the show, leave a review, and share this episode with someone who needs it. Until next time, keep exploring what it means to be fully human.